Today, we're diving into a jet that not only defined an era, but quietly shaped the evolution of future combat aircraft. The Kfir C7 may not always get the same spotlight as its American, Russian, or European counterparts, but its story is one of bold engineering, political pressure, improvisation, and pure strategic necessity, and somehow, through all of that, it became one of the jets that influenced the design and philosophy of the fighters that came after it. So let's go deep into the heart of the Kfir, its origins, its surprising achievements, and how a small country with limited resources built something that earned the respect of air forces worldwide. It all begins with a challenge that would break most nations. Israel found itself under embargoes that limited the import of aircraft, engines, and components at a time when it needed cutting-edge defense capabilities the most. The French Mirage III had already proven to be an outstanding fighter, but the political circumstances made it impossible for Israel to rely on foreign support. That pressure created the perfect environment for innovation. Israeli engineers had to take what they already had, improve it, redesign it, and create something that could outperform even the original aircraft it was modeled after. That was the seed that would eventually grow into the IAI Kfir. The early prototypes were born from the Nesher program, which itself was essentially an Israeli-made Mirage. But engineers wanted far more than a copy. They wanted more power, more maneuverability, more reliability, and a fighter that could perform air superiority missions while also carrying heavy strike loads. So they took the Mirage airframe and replaced the engine with the legendary American General Electric J79. This was the same engine used in the F-4 Phantom Roman II, known for its raw thrust and durability. That combination alone completely changed the personality of the aircraft. Suddenly, it wasn't just a Mirage variant. It was something faster, more aggressive, and more adaptable. As the design evolved, the idea of adding canards became pivotal. The small forward wings transformed the jet's handling characteristics. The Mirage had always been slippery and fast, but adding the canards and redesigning the control surfaces made the Kfir feel more alive, especially in low-speed maneuvers and during attack runs. Pilots often described it as point-and-shoot precise. For a delta-wing fighter, that agility was a huge achievement. This C7 variant pushed those limits even further by adding upgraded avionics, improved hardpoints, and even more engine performance. When you look at the Kfir C7, what stands out immediately is how much it represents the philosophy of making the most out of what you have. Israel understood that it couldn't rely on unlimited budgets or endless resources. Instead, the focus was on practical performance enhancements and real-world combat usability. The C7 was given additional pylons to carry more weapons. It could handle laser-guided munitions, bombs, rockets, and air-to-air missiles all at once. It wasn't just a fighter. It was a multi-role workhorse before the idea of multi-role fighters became the global standard. One thing people often overlook is how the Kfir became a valuable test platform for Israeli weapons that would later change the industry. Precision, guided weapons, targeting pods, electronic warfare systems, and even early helmet-mounted sighting technology were tested and refined on this aircraft. That alone shows how forward-thinking the engineers were. They weren't just creating a jet. They were creating a foundation for future systems that would later power advanced fighters around the world. The Kfir also became a symbol of adaptability in global aviation. Several countries acquired it for their air forces, and the jet ended up serving in environments very different from the one it was originally designed for. Colombia, Sri Lanka, and Ecuador all operated Kfirs and used them in real conflict situations, proving the aircraft's durability and effectiveness. Even the United States used the Kfir, designated as the F-21, during the 1980s for aggressor training. That fact alone says a lot. When the world's most advanced air force chooses your jet to simulate enemy fighters, it means your aircraft has a unique performance envelope worth studying. The F-21 role gave American pilots a chance to train against a jet that had exceptional acceleration, high-energy maneuverability, and a very small radar cross-section for its time. It represented Soviet aircraft performance in a way that helped pilots prepare for real-world threats. For the Kfir, that was another badge of honor, being trusted by the world's strongest air force as a training opponent that could push pilots to their limits. When discussing the influence of the Kfir on future fighters, one has to look beyond just the aircraft itself. The technologies, design philosophies, and systems developed through the Kfir program fed into the next generation of Israeli aircraft. The Lavi project, although ultimately cancelled, incorporated many concepts refined through the Kfir. Those concepts didn't disappear, they spread, they were shared. They influenced global aviation in ways most people don't realize. Many avionics ideas and aerodynamic concepts resurfaced years later in international programs like the F-16I, the F-35 cooperation initiatives, and even drone development. That's the fascinating part about the Kfir. Its impact is subtle, indirect, yet deeply significant. It wasn't about being the most famous jet. It was about being the jet that carried forward the lessons that shaped modern fighters. Its integration of American engines, French design roots, and Israeli innovation created a hybrid that demonstrated how powerful international collaboration could be when traditional limitations were removed. Now imagine being a pilot flying the C7 for the first time. You sit down in the cockpit, surrounded by systems that evolved through years of real combat experience. You throttle up the J-79, and the aircraft surges forward with the unmistakable roar that only this engine can produce. The acceleration pushes you back into your seat, and the delta wing begins to carve the air. You feel the influence of the canards correcting your pitch. You roll into a turn, and the aircraft responds instantly, far sharper than the Mirage ancestors it came from. That feeling is why the Kfir became loved by so many pilots. It wasn't just efficient, it was thrilling. The C7 also represented independence. It allowed Israel to maintain a capable air force even when global politics were working against it. That fact alone makes the aircraft an icon of engineering resilience. The world often sees innovation as a result of wealth, but the Kfir proves that innovation often comes from necessity. When a country is pushed to its limits, that's when some of the greatest inventions appear. Another major impact the Kfir had on future fighters came from its modular design approach. Weapon systems could be swapped, avionics upgraded, and sensors replaced without redesigning the entire aircraft. This flexible architecture is now a standard expectation in modern jets. Fifth-generation aircraft like the F-35 rely heavily on modularity, and that design culture didn't appear overnight. It came from years of experimentation with platforms like the Kfir. Let's also talk about its survivability. Delta wing fighters traditionally struggle with low-speed performance, but the Kfir's blended design, canards, and powerful engine gave it impressive escape and defensive capability. In ground attack missions, the jet could dive in fast, release its payload, and pull out sharply. Pilots trusted it, and that trust made it invaluable in combat. The aircraft didn't just perform on paper, it performed under fire. The electronic warfare capability of the C7 was particularly advanced for its time. Israel's focus on electronic combat meant the Kfir often carried jamming pods and countermeasures that allowed it to operate in hostile airspace with confidence. Many of those EW lessons became standard practice and influenced global strategies in future air combat. With all these achievements, one might think the Kfir would be a famous aircraft worldwide, but its legacy is more of a hidden treasure. It was overshadowed by more mainstream fighters like the F-16, F-15, MiG-29, and Mirage 2000. Yet, behind the scenes, it was quietly shaping the evolution of technology, tactics, and design. In many ways, the Kfir was ahead of its time. It blended multi-role capability with raw power, agility, and upgrade potential long before these features became industry expectations. It was one of the stepping stones that bridged the gap between older third-generation fighters and the more advanced fourth-generation fighters that would dominate the skies in the decades that followed. The influence of the Kfir continues even today. Modernized variants are still serving in some air forces. Upgraded versions equipped with new radars, advanced weapons, and modern avionics keep the design alive long after many of its contemporaries retired. That longevity proves the strength of the original engineering. The Kfir tells a story of how a nation with limited resources can still produce world-tier aerospace technology. It tells a story of innovation born from necessity, of using what you have to create something that not only works but excels. And it tells a story of how even lesser-known jets can shape the future in ways history books sometimes overlook. The jet paved the way for future fighters not through fame but through function. It demonstrated that adaptability matters, that modularity matters, that combining technologies from different sources can result in something far greater than expected. And most importantly, it showed that limitations don't define innovation, creativity does. As we look at modern fighters today, from the F-35 to the Rafale to advanced drones, you can still see echoes of the ideas tested on the Kfir. That's its legacy, quiet, powerful, and deeply influential. A jet that didn't just fly. It taught the world how to think differently about aviation. Its legacy continues in every aircraft that uses mixed technology, modular weapons, hybrid aerodynamics, and multi-role adaptability. The Kfir stood at the crossroads of the past and the future and helped point the direction forward. The story of the Kfir C7 is a story of determination and vision. It stands as an example of what innovation looks like when you refuse to accept limitations. It reminds us that even in the toughest circumstances, humans can create machines that reshape the future. And as we close this deep dive into the Kfir, let's take a moment to appreciate how much impact one aircraft can have, even without the world realizing it. The sky is full of legends, but some of the most important ones aren't the loudest. They're the ones that pave the way quietly, leaving behind a legacy that lasts far beyond their service years. Thank you for watching, and as always, stay inspired, stay curious, and keep exploring the incredible stories behind the machines that shaped our world.